This morning, we're joined by Dr. Olisa Agbakoba, SAN. It's a pleasure to have you, sir. Thank you very much for joining us. Marking this 1 year in office, would you say that this administration has positioned itself as one that is passionate about reforming the judiciary?
Well, actually, it's not the job of the administration, strictly speaking, because there are three arms of government: executive, legislature, and the judiciary. So it's the head of the judiciary, that the CJN, that deals with that. So if I were President Tinubu, I would say, it's not my job. It's the job of the NJC, National Judicial Council, too. But I get your broad point, which is about how far has, reforms been felt around policy questions, rule of law, the functions of the courts, the functions of the legislature, the executive, all of that. For me, I'll give just above an average score.
All right. And let's talk about, I'm glad that you've mentioned the different arms of government.
Sure.
The independence of the judiciary is a conversation that we've had over and over again.
Absolutely.
And lately, there have been those who have started canvassing for an actual separation, especially because we're looking at the role that the executive plays in appointing judges.
Sure.
So is this a position that you align yourself with? How exactly are we faring regarding achieving actual independence of the judiciary?
It's a tough question you ask, because there's a mixture of things. So it's not quite accurate that the judiciary gets appointments from the executive. It's actually the NJC.
Yeah, exactly. But then the president has to...
It's an endorsement.
Yes.
And
so
generally...
some people say that they should totally separate that so that...
No, there has to be Montesquieu, one of the great thinkers of modern democracy, said there has to be checks and balance. So you don't want an autocrat. So if you separate everything, then one arm will run away. So there must be ways in which one arm needs the other to function. So the executive cannot do anything unless it presents an appropriation estimate to the National Assembly. If the National Assembly says no, that's it. So that's a check. So the judiciary cannot just say, you know what, we can appoint our judges. So they can nominate their judges. So the National Judicial Council, where I sat for 6 years, will nominate judges from the High Court of Appeal and Supreme Court, and then send it for endorsement by the president, who himself cannot say, I hereby appoint the CJN. He now sends it to the Senate. You see the link for confirmation. So it goes through that process. So all three arms, independent in their own way, need to cohabit to get government working. And that's absolutely good, because no one government can say, I can do without the other.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the welfare of the judges, which has been a conversation that we've talked about for the longest time. Very recently...
It's very poor. It's very, very poor. Maybe total package will be about 2 million. There was a case which was very pathetic, and I regret that it was decided the way it was decided. So a judge of the Federal High Court, the mom was dying of kidney failure. So what would he do? He turned to the people he knew. So he called a couple of lawyers and said, look, my mom is in danger. And they gave contributions. It was considered to be corruption. I didn't consider it to be corruption, because he was driven to that state because the quality of service conditions are so poor. Now, when a man is dissatisfied, it affects output. So the first point I always made when I sat on the NJC was, if you don't wiggle with the, package of judges, you get a poor output. So that contributes significantly to the public distrust. There's a trust deficit in the way in which they see the judiciary. A fundamental problem is the lack of funding, proper funding. That needs to change.
Okay. And this trust deficit that you speak, it's very evident. Also, we started to see after the last elections, a number of Nigerians started to lose trust in the ability of the judiciary to be the last hope of the common man. In fact, a slogan I did see was, it's becoming the lost hope of the common man.
Sure.
So how can we sort of reestablish that trust for the judiciary in the hearts of the Nigerian citizens?
The whole package. Don't pull the judiciary away. The whole package. There's a distrust. There's a trust deficit in the way in which people relate to their governors. By their governors, I mean National Assembly, Judiciary. It's a package. So since you ask specifically about the judiciary, the first step to resolve the trust deficit is to take care of them. Because a judge cannot be writing longhand under a tree. I hope you know some judges sit under trees. Some have no electricity even in their homes to write judgments. The conditions are so terrible that not anybody in the rank of silk will accept it. So we need to play around with what we need to do for the judiciary. You must deal with their conditions of service.
Well, we're saying that there's a judicial office holders bill, so we're hopeful that we start to see things looking up for the judges very soon. I want us to take the conversation now to some peculiar cases that have happened. Going to River State, for example, there's been a lot of drama between the former governor and the current governor. Now, Governor Siminalayi Fubara and His Excellency Nyesom Wike seemingly had conflict, and the president intervened by virtue of the peace accord, which turned out to be not so peaceful. Now, some Nigerians have criticized the intervention of the president, saying that he's circumventing the provision of the Constitution in Section 109 that provides for what happens when the 27 lawmakers vacate their seat. So, what do you think about how it was handled with the peace accord, and how do you think it should have been handled if you don't support that?
I wouldn't even answer that question. I would even say, do we have a politically mature class? That's the issue. So, rules work to the extent that the people who play in the context of those rules have maturity. The political class here, generally speaking, is far from mature. So you will find carpet crossing across the board, not just Rivers. Rivers is only one example. It's been happening. There's been no consequence. The principle of godfatherism has occurred. So why is River State any big deal? When they asked me the question, it's no big deal. I'm not surprised. So Governor Wike was there. He put his guy. We all know that. I'd never heard of, what is his name?
Siminalayi Fubara.
What?
Siminalayi Fubara.
Okay, Fubara. I'd never heard of him. Suddenly he appears. Wike himself, I never heard of him. He was chief of staff to Rotimi Amechi. Rotimi Amechi, I never heard of him. He was working in the office in the hospital of Dr. Peter Odili. So those who make these people expect total loyalty. Oh, you're disloyal. That's it. War. And in that context, the Constitution is thrown out of the window. So the 27 men you see who crossed, don't they know what the Constitution says? If you cross, you're out. Except you cross on the basis of a division. So the question would be, was there a division in the House in Rivers? I don't know. But that's the broad principle. But it's not about the Constitution. In the United Kingdom, there's no Constitution. It's about the maturity of the people who play politics. Our politics is very immature. So people want to go there by all means, even if it meant killing their mothers. If I was a committed PDP man and the structure of the party in the state said, well, you want to be governor? You can't be PDP. It's going to be APC. The guy would jump into the other party. So parties don't mean anything. The manifestos mean nothing. What they're looking at is enrichment. That's what's holding down our politics. So the fundamental question would be, where do we begin to find people who understand that politics is not a do or die thing? That's the challenge. Because we don't have them, generally speaking. We have some fine men who are in politics and women, before you accuse me of being gender insensitive. But the problem is the immaturities. I don't want to say this, but I'll say this on Democracy Day. Are we really mature for democracy? Deep conceptual question. Very deep. And I'll give 2 examples, or maybe 3. The man in Kigali is not a Democrat. He's been in power for about 30 years. But he gets what we call formal democracy or electoral autocracy. So he continues to be there. But they love him. China is not democratic, but they brought almost 900 million people out of poverty. Lee Kuan Yew wasn't a Democrat, but he got re-elected. Now ask the people of these 3 countries, what do you think of our leaders? They say, this guy did well for us. So here where we have formal democracy, will the person on the streets say, on this day of democracy, May 29, I'm happy, well, that answer will be no. So the real conceptual question I'm throwing out today to politicians is, are we ripe democracy? We shouldn't take it for granted. Where is why we're democratic? Yes, fine. Where is it? Where is it? That's why I like Obasanjo's redefinition of democracy. It must be by the consent and contentment of Nigerians. So you are forced to say to your kids at home, I'm going to give you food. Do our leaders think in that context? Do they see you and me and say, Olisa needs to eat morning, afternoon, and evening? Or they just take all the money? That's the problem.
So now that you've highlighted that the key problem we have is political immaturity, how do we get around this?
I don't know. I have no idea. That's the truth. I don't have the answer. I wish I could wave a wand. Hey, all you politicians, become good men. I don't know. It's a long process. I've been in this thing for about 40-something years. I started this process of getting involved in struggle for democracy, and we're still struggling. Just conceive of whether in 30 years you'll be asking this question to see how frustrated I am. Think of it. A man who was 29 asking the question of when will we have a good government is today asking it. It's terrible. So the message of this Democracy Day, it's not a happy one. Look at all the period gone. You see this thing called 70. You say 71. Plus 9 is what?
There's 80.
Because I disagree when my grandkids say, Grandpa, don't call me Grandpa. I'm a young man. The truth is, at 80, I'm an old man. So are you telling me that I've wasted my life? So I'm considering the possibility of, is there an alternative, conceptually? So it's a challenging question. But if you are my wife and you don't give me food, Monday, Tuesday, for 2 years, I'm going to ask myself, why am I married? Don't I look for a girlfriend and kick this one out?
But that's your generation. It's changing now.
I don't know about that. I'm using it as an example, as an analogy of, let us accept. I'm not even talking about President Tinubu. Along the line, from the time of democracy till today, the story has been an unhappy one. It's not been a happy story. Because if you want to know the measure of unhappiness, it's not me you should be talking to actually on this Democracy Day. You should be in Ajegunle with the mic and ask him, how do you feel? Then you get the real barometer. But because I've had a deep connection with people, so I'm able to, that from time to time, the National Bureau of Statistics will release a result. I use it as toilet paper. Because I want to know the state of Nigeria's economy. When my driver comes to work on Monday, I ask him, give me the report. Not the one coming from the National Bureau. Because it's all painted. Statistically, Nigeria grew by 2-something%. And so rice is going up. Rice is going up. So until the price of rice drops, diesel comes down, petrol comes down, gari, electricity, then I can say, yes, there is something. So people feel discontent. I don't think that I need to go and start asking, are you discontent? But I feel it. I feel the discontent. So I thought this is a point to make on Democracy Day, because people say, happy Democracy Day. Ain't nothing happy about it. That's the truth. Ain't nothing happy about it. It's a day to reflect and say, how do we get mature leaders? So we're watching President Tinubu. He's made some good statements, some not so good. So if you plateau his score, maybe just about a bit above average, but I can point to some people in his government for praise.
All right. So I think on a final note, what's the hope for the next 1 year? I mean, how can we as Nigerians hold our government accountable?
We can't. We're too poor. We can't. So it's saying that my grandchild of 4 years can hold me accountable. I'm the one to define what is good for her. So that's another challenge. Rishi Sunak's Conservative Party have been in office for an unbroken period of 13 years. Everybody is fed up. That's accountability. So when the government here hasn't done well, can you and I vote them out? Can't, because our votes don't count. So we're at the mercy of these people. So the message I'd like to pass to President Tinubu is, you've got some things right. Some things you need to, but the first thing to do is to make sure that your performance index, the KPI that you set, that I now see ministers on TV giving reports, anyone that fails, show him the door, so that there will be a strong public perception that not performing will have consequences. You'll see the change. I'll give you an example. Very foolish example, but I always like to use foolish personal examples. So in my country house in Onitsha, I discovered that the staff had appropriated my time and money to themselves. So I told my executive assistant, we will teach them a lesson. No more salary. For the first time, Victoria began to call, so now you know I'm there. Consequence! Then every day, the one who is the housekeeper who goes to Pentecostal churches, I'm not saying Pentecostal church is bad, but leaves her work where she's paid and disappears. I said, okay, since you are not a Pentecostal pastor, I won't pay you. She's now there every minute reporting to my executive assistant. What's the message in this? You punish those who don't perform. Look at the minister, Betty, whatever her name is.
Better I do.
Took away 500 million, allegedly. Nothing. So why won't I take my own? Why won't I? There has to be a strong perception that misbehavior will be severely punished. When that perception is there, we will have confidence in the government. When the government announces palliatives, we say, the money is coming, we're waiting. But if look at the last minister of aviation, wow. You should see his palatial thing in Casino. So it's a good thing he's going through this trial, and I hope it ends in a conviction. So my last point would be, government can only be good if those who perform do it on our behalf, not on their behalf. When they put the money in their pocket and there's no consequence.